My adopted sister leveled an unthinkable accusation against me at a family dinner. They kicked me out at 17. 10 years later, they turned up begging. I refused to open the door. You see, before my parents showed up on my doorstep, crying and desperate, you need to understand the night they kicked me out. Without that context, none of this makes any sense at all. I was 17 a Saturday. In the Ashford household, Saturdays were practically a religion. My parents, Frank and Carol, were obsessed with how our family looked to everyone else. We weren't just a family, we were a living, breathing advertisement for suburban perfection. Dad was the quintessential provider, always making sure the neighbors knew about his salary, his investments. Mom was the hostess, the kind of woman who could bake a perfect pie and gossip about 3 different families in the same breath. Then there was my older brother, Brian, basically a photocopy of my dad, but without the backbone. And finally, Megan. Megan was my adopted sister. My parents brought her home when she was 8 because, apparently, the perfect family portrait needed a daughter to be complete. She was 16 that night. For years, I was the one who helped her with math homework. I was the one who scared off the kids who made fun of her for being adopted. I was the safe one, the good one. That night was supposed to be a celebration, my parents' anniversary. The house was packed. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, even the local pastor. Everyone who mattered in our small, suffocating town was crammed into the dining room. The air smelled like expensive roast beef and my mother's overpowering perfume. I was in the kitchen refilling the ice bucket, actually feeling pretty good about life. I had decent grades, a girlfriend named Tessa who I thought was the love of my life, and a college fund that was finally healthy enough to get me out of that place. I walked into the dining room and set the ice on the sideboard. That's when I noticed Megan. She was sitting at the kids' end of the table, but she wasn't eating. She was vibrating. That's the only way I can describe it. Her hands gripped the tablecloth so hard her knuckles were white. She looked pale. Clammy. I leaned in and whispered, "Hey, you okay?" She flinched like I'd burned her. "I have to," she stammered, way too loud. The whole room went quiet. My father stood at the head of the table, holding a glass, a wide smile fixed on his face. "Sweetheart, what is it?" he cooed. "Do you want to make a toast?" 30 pairs of eyes turned to the 16-year-old girl trembling in her chair. Megan stood up. She looked at Mom. She looked at Dad. Then she looked at me. And I saw something shift in her face. It wasn't fear anymore. It was cold, hard calculation. "I need to tell you all something," she said, her voice cracking. "Go ahead, honey," Mom cooed. "We're all family here." "I'm pregnant," Megan whispered. The silence that followed was instant and suffocating. You could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Dad's smile froze. Mom's hand flew to her necklace. "Pregnant," Dad repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "Who did this?" And then Megan started crying. Not just crying, she sobbed, shoulders heaving, face buried in her hands. It was a performance worthy of an award. "He forced me," she wailed. "I said no. I said we shouldn't, but he forced me." The room erupted. My uncle stood up. "Who? Give us a name." She lifted a shaking finger and pointed it directly at me. "It was Nate," she choked out. "Nate did it." I stood there, still holding a napkin, my brain completely short-circuiting. I looked at my dad, expecting him to laugh. Expecting him to say, "Don't be ridiculous. Nate is your brother." But he wasn't laughing. His face had turned a shade of purple I'd never seen before. He crossed the room in 2 strides and swung. His fist connected with my jaw. I crashed into the sideboard. Ice bucket, glasses, everything shattered on the floor. "You animal!" Dad roared, standing over me. I scrambled backward on the hardwood, spitting blood. "Dad, stop. I didn't do anything. Listen to me." "You don't call me that," he spat. "You don't have a father. Not anymore." I looked at my mother. She was holding Megan, rocking her back and forth. I locked eyes with her. "Mom, please. You know me." I wouldn't. Her eyes were cold, colder than ice. "Get him out of my sight," she hissed. "Call the police. Get that monster out of my house." My brother Brian stepped forward. He looked at me on the floor, bleeding, surrounded by broken glass. He didn't offer a hand. He spit on my shoe. Minutes later, the cops were there. I was hauled out in handcuffs, paraded past the neighbors who had gathered on their lawns, their faces a mixture of shock and disgust. In 10 minutes, I'd gone from the kid with a college fund and a bright future to the neighborhood monster. They took me to the station, a freezing interrogation room with a mirror I just knew was two-way. I sat there for hours, my jaw throbbing, my shirt stiff with dried blood. The detective who came in wasn't aggressive, just tired. "She's 16, son," he said, his voice heavy. "You know how much time you're looking at?" My voice was hoarse. "I didn't do it." "Test the baby. Do a DNA test. Check the dates. I was at soccer camp 3 months ago. Please, just investigate." They held me overnight. But here's the thing about accusations without physical proof. They couldn't hold me forever without a charge. The forensic exam found nothing. Megan's timeline was shaky, full of holes. By morning, they had to let me go, pending further investigation. I walked out into the blinding morning sun with a swollen lip, a stiff, bloody shirt, no phone, and no money. I thought, okay, I just need to go home and explain. Once everyone calms down, we'll figure this out. God, I was such a stupid, naive kid. I didn't know my life as an Ashford was already over. I walked 5 miles back to my house. When I turned onto my street, I stopped dead. My stuff was scattered across the wet grass like garbage. Clothes, trophies, textbooks, my bedding. My laptop was smashed, screen shattered, lying next to the sprinkler head. The front door opened and my father stepped out, holding a baseball bat. He stood on the porch, looking down at me like I was a stray dog that had wandered onto his property. "I told you," he said, eerily calm. "You aren't welcome here." "Dad, I just want my keys and my wallet, please," I begged. "You don't have keys," he said, his voice hard. "And as for your wallet, consider the cash inside a severance package." I found my wallet in the mud. $200. That was my entire net worth. I ran to my car, an old sedan I'd bought with summer job money. Thank God the keys were in the ignition. I backed out of the driveway, looking at the house one last time. My father just stood there, watching me leave like a guard dog protecting a castle from a virus. I just drove. I didn't know where I was going, just drove until the house disappeared. I pulled into a gas station parking lot 2 towns over. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't grip the wheel. I needed to hear a friendly voice. I needed Tessa. My cell was still with the cops, so I used the payphone. I dialed her number by heart. "Nate," she gasped when she picked up. "Oh my God, where are you?" "I'm at a gas station," I said, my voice cracking. "Tessa, you have to believe me. Megan is lying. I never touched her." "I know," she whispered. "I know you, Nate. You're the guy who cries during movies. You're the guy who catches spiders and puts them outside. I know you didn't do it." "Thank God," I said, leaning my forehead against the cold metal of the payphone. "Can I come over just for one night?" Silence. "Then, my parents," she stammered. "They know about the arrest. The whole town knows. It's all over Facebook. People are saying you're a predator, but you know I'm not. My dad said if I talk to you," she cried, her voice breaking, "he's cutting me off. He said he'll pull my tuition." "So, what are you saying?" I asked, my heart sinking. "I can't lose my family, Nate. I'm sorry. Please don't call again." Click. The line went dead. I got back in my car. I screamed until my throat was raw, pounded the steering wheel until my knuckles bruised. Then I just cried. I cried for the kid who woke up that morning thinking about college applications. That kid was dead. I started driving again, just west. Drove until the sun went down. For the next week, I lived in that car. Walmart parking lots, gas station bathrooms with harsh brown paper towels, peanut butter sandwiches. The $200 drained fast. By day 7, I was in a town called Maplewood, 3 states away. I was starving. Not the skip lunch kind of hungry, but my stomach was cramping, my head felt light and floaty. I smelled like sweat and old upholstery. My car sputtered and died right as I rolled into the parking lot of a rundown diner called Hank's Grill. I didn't choose that diner. My car literally ran out of gas right there. Fate, or just brutal luck, I still don't know. I sat there for an hour, watching people eat through the window. There was a handwritten sign taped to the glass. Help wanted. Dishwasher, cash pay. I pushed the door open. A bell jingled. A man was behind the counter, big, bald, with a gray beard and forearms like ham hocks. He looked up, scanned my dirty clothes, my shaking hands. We ain't a shelter, kid, he rumbled. Buy something or get out. I saw the sign, I rasped. For the dishwasher. He stopped wiping. He looked at the sign, then back at me. You ever washed a dish in your life? Yes, sir. I work hard. I just need a job. He stared at me for an uncomfortable minute. Then he reached under the counter and pulled out a basket of fries and a burger that looked like a mistake order. Eat, he said. Then you wash. If you break anything, I break you. That was how I met Hank. And that was the day Nate Ashford, the old version of me, truly vanished. The kitchen at Hank's Grill was brutal, and I loved it. 12 hours a day, hands in scalding water, scrubbing grease off plates that had been dirty since the 80s. My back ached, my fingers were pruned and cracked. But for those 12 hours, I didn't have to think. At the end of that first shift, Hank tossed me a set of keys. Attic, he grunted. There's a cot. Don't smoke. Don't bring girls. Don't steal. The attic was basically a storage closet with a window and a mattress on the floor. To me, it looked like the Ritz. Over the next few months, Hank started teaching me things. He saw I was smart and hated sitting around doing nothing. When the walk-in freezer broke, he didn't call a repairman. He called me over, showed me the compressor, the coils. I started reading manuals, started fixing the AC units, the fryer, the ice machine. I liked machines. Machines didn't lie. If a machine was broken, there was a reason. And if you followed the logic, you could fix it. Humans weren't like that. One night after closing, Hank slid a brochure across the counter. Trade school, HVAC certification. I can't, I said. No diploma, no ID I can use. He pulled out an envelope. This is your salary for the last 6 months. I've been saving the extra. Use it to get a lawyer. Get a name change. Stop hiding, Nate. Build something. I opened the envelope. Full of cash. Why? I asked, my eyes burning. Because, Hank said, looking away, my son would have been your age if he hadn't. Well, if he hadn't made different choices. Don't waste it. I studied for my GED at night in the attic. Got my certification. Changed my name legally to Nate Sterling. Sterling was my grandmother's maiden name, the only person in that family who ever showed me unconditional love before she passed. I was rebuilding myself, piece by piece. 5 years passed. I wasn't a dishwasher anymore. I was a lead technician for a local HVAC company. I had my own apartment. Small, but it had a lock on the door and my name on the lease. Separate from everything I used to be. I was stable, not rich, but safe. I had this ritual, though. Every year on my birthday, I'd go to an internet cafe, never my own computer. Paranoia is hard to shake, and I'd search for them. It was self-destructive, and I knew it, but I needed to know. That year, I found Megan's Facebook. Public. I scrolled and my breath caught. There were photos of a welcome home party. And there, in the center, was Megan holding a little girl, maybe 4. The caption read, "Happy 4th birthday to my little miracle, Sophie." My parents were in the photo. Dad was smiling. Mom was holding the cake. They looked happy. They looked perfect. The math hit me. She accused me when she was 16. The baby was 4. That meant she kept the child. That meant my parents were playing grandparents to a kid born from the same lie that destroyed me. And a comment from my brother Brian, best niece ever. Glad we kept the circle tight. Kept the circle tight. That was their code for protecting the lie. I logged off, walked out into the rain, and I made a decision. I would never let these people hurt me again. I would build something so solid that their opinion of me wouldn't matter at all. I threw myself into work. Every overtime shift. Every crawl space job nobody wanted. I was eating gas station burritos for lunch most days. Eventually, I saved enough, took out a small loan, and started Sterling Heating and Air. 1 van at first, then 2, then a few more. I hired guys who needed second chances but had good hands. We showed up on time. We didn't overcharge. In a town full of scammers, actually doing honest work was the competitive edge. By 27, I had a small fleet of trucks, a receptionist named Jess, and a solid reputation. I had a house, nothing crazy, but it had a yard for a dog I named Buster. I'd done it. But victory can be lonely. I dated a few women, but I always pushed them away. As soon as things got serious, as soon as they asked about my family, I shut down. Couldn't risk another Tessa. Then on a random Tuesday in November, I remember because I had just closed the biggest contract Sterling had ever landed, a commercial complex downtown, Jess buzzed my intercom. Her voice sounded off. "It's a woman," she whispered. "Says her name is Tessa. Says she has information about your family. Says she's crying." The pen I was holding snapped. A clean break. Ink bleeding onto my thumb. I picked up the phone. "This is Sterling," I said, my voice flat. "You have 30 seconds. "It's Megan," Tessa rushed out, her voice shaky. "She's been arrested. It's all over. The lies, everything. She's in county jail." "What did she do?" I asked, my mind reeling. "Not shoplifting," Tessa said. "She did it again. She accused someone else." A cold chill ran down my spine. "Who?" "A man named Grant Palmer," Tessa explained. "A developer, older, wealthy. Megan was working as his assistant. She went to HR, went to the police, told them he forced himself on her, told them she was pregnant. Same script, same performance, same tears. But Grant wasn't me. Grant was ready. He had cameras in his office, audio recordings. He had proof that Megan came on to him, that he rejected her, and that she threatened to ruin him like she ruined her brother if he didn't pay up." "She said that?" I whispered. "She mentioned me?" "She was recorded saying it," Tessa confirmed. When the police played the tape, Megan broke. She didn't just confess to framing Grant. She confessed to everything. The detectives pulled up my old file. They pressed her about the pattern. She told them about the night at the dinner table. She told them I never touched her. She told them Sophie isn't mine. "Who is the real father?" I asked. "A guy named Travis," Tessa said. "He was 19. He told Megan if she named him, he'd hurt her. He skipped town the next day. And there I was. The brother who helped with homework. The brother who never fought back. The safe target. I was a shield," I murmured. "She weaponized my kindness." There was a long silence. Then I asked the question that actually mattered. "Why are you calling, Tessa?" "Why now? Why not 5 years ago?" "I was a coward," she wept. "My parents threatened to cut my tuition. I chose money over the truth. I chose comfort over you. I have to live with that every day." "Yes," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "You do." I hung up before she could say goodbye. I sat there a long time. The sun moved across the floor of my office. I didn't move. My computer pinged. An email. Then another. Then my phone started buzzing. The local news headline was screaming, "Local woman arrested for extortion, admits decade-long frame job." I scrolled the comments. "Isn't this the sister of that kid who vanished? I went to school with Nate. He was a good guy. This makes me sick." I always thought something was off about her story. I laughed. A dry, humorless bark. Suddenly, everyone was an expert. Everyone always knew. Where were these people when I was sleeping in a Honda Civic? The collapse was fast. Small towns are vicious when they flip. The same people who shunned me turned their sights on my parents. Dad lost his job. His company didn't want the PR of employing a man who helped frame his own kid. Rumors swirled about Brian's marriage falling apart. His wife apparently didn't love being married to a coward. Then they showed up. Mom first. She came to my warehouse holding a Tupperware container. She looked small. The woman who once ruled the dinner table was hunched, graying. I stood there in my work boots and Sterling HVAC polo, arms crossed. "It's Nate Sterling now," I said when she called me by my old name. She flinched. "I made your favorite chicken casserole," she said, lifting the container. "I thought maybe you were hungry." The absurdity almost made me laugh. 10 years, and she brings a casserole? "I'm not hungry," I said flatly. "What do you want?" "I want to apologize," she wept. "We didn't know. She lied to us too. We were victims too." Victims. I stepped closer. You watched Dad beat me. You watched me bleed on the floor. You didn't ask me a single question. You threw my clothes in the mud. Your father was so angry, she sobbed. I was scared. You weren't scared, I said, my voice hardening. You were relieved. You preferred the lie because it was cleaner. Easier to sacrifice me than to admit your perfect daughter was flawed. She begged me to come home. Said Dad wasn't doing well. I told her to take her casserole and leave. Told her if she came back I'd file for a restraining order. She set the Tupperware on a shipping crate and walked away, sobbing. I threw it in the dumpster. 2 days later, Dad showed up. No food, just attitude. He barged past Jess, who later told me he didn't even look at her, just walked straight through like he owned the place. I heard the commotion from my office. He walked in, looked around at the desk, the awards on the wall, the lot full of trucks. You've done well, he said. No hello. No sorry. Just an appraisal. Like he was touring a property he might buy. We need you to talk to Grant Palmer, he said. Tell him to back off. The lawsuit is going to bankrupt us. He's talking about taking the house. We lost our daughter to prison. You didn't lose her, I said, my voice steady. You enabled her. We made a mistake, he said, slamming his hand on my desk. We're human. Blood is thicker than water. I'm not an Ashford, I reminded him. You said it yourself. You erased me. I pressed the intercom. Security. I have a trespasser in the executive office. Please remove him. His jaw dropped. You're calling security on your father? You're not my father, I said, looking him dead in the eye. My father was a man named Hank who ran a diner and taught me how to be a man. You're just a guy who owes me a childhood. You're a cold one, he spat as the guards walked him out. I learned from the best, I replied. A week later, a box showed up. No return address. Inside were dozens of unopened letters, the ones I'd sent in the first month after they kicked me out. The letters where I begged them to believe me, where I told them I was hungry and cold. They kept them. Never opened a single one. I took the box to the warehouse, threw it in the incinerator, and watched my desperate teenage words turn to ash. Imagine that. Handwritten, desperate letters from a homeless 17-year-old kid, begging his parents to believe him. And they kept them in a box, sealed for 10 years. Never cracked one open. That's not just anger. That's a level of cold-blooded commitment to being wrong that's almost unbelievable. 3 months after Megan's arrest, I got a letter from her from prison. She wanted to meet. I almost didn't go, but she mentioned Sophie, the little girl, and said there were things I didn't know. Curiosity is a curse. I drove 2 hours north to a gray, concrete facility, sitting in the middle of a dead cornfield. Went through security, sat down at booth 4 behind plexiglass. When Megan walked in, I barely recognized her. Gaunt, dull hair pulled back in a severe bun. She looked 20 years older than 26. You came, she said through the phone. I had a free afternoon, I lied. Talk. She told me why she picked me. Travis, the real father, had a gun. Threatened to hurt her if she named him. So, she picked the safe one, the gentle one, the one she thought her parents would handle quietly. She didn't think they'd throw me out. She panicked. And once the lie was out, everyone believed it so fast she couldn't take it back. I didn't offer understanding. Then she dropped the real bomb. It's about Sophie, she said. She's 10 now. She asks about her father and mom and dad. They told her you're her father, that you were a bad man who hurt me and ran away. They showed her your high school photo. She hates you, Nate. She thinks you abandoned her. The blood drained from my face. They hadn't just erased me. They'd turned me into a boogeyman for an innocent child. They poisoned a little girl's mind to protect themselves. I stood up. You tell them, I said, my voice shaking. If they don't tell that girl the truth, every bit of it, I will sue for defamation so hard they won't have a house to sleep in. She couldn't help. She was behind bars. That was her problem. I hung up the receiver, stood up, and walked out without looking back. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The guard barely glanced at me. I got in my truck, sat there for a minute staring at the razor wire, then pulled out my phone and called Grant Palmer. I'm ready, I said. Let's end this. The civil trial was quick and brutal. Grant's legal team was thorough. I sat on the stand and told my story. For the first time in my life, people were legally obligated to listen. My parents were in the gallery. Dad had lost so much weight, his suit hung off him. Mom stared at the floor. The verdict came down hard. Megan was found liable for damages. Grant's team uncovered financial fraud my parents committed, covering her legal bills, hidden assets, drained accounts. Liens were placed on the house. They were stripped bare. But the real justice came quietly. Child Protective Services investigated Sophie's living situation. Turns out, raising a kid in a home built on lies isn't considered safe. Custody was awarded to a distant relative of Travis's who was actually decent. Sophie was going to be told the truth, not by me, but by people who could undo the damage properly. I met Brooke about 6 months later, a graphic designer I hired to rebrand the company fleet. She walked into the conference room, laying out logo samples, tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear, and smiled. "You must be the guy who built this place," she said. "I'm just the guy who fixes the AC," I replied. We went to dinner that night. I didn't mean to tell her everything, but Brooke had this way of listening, a stillness that made you want to fill the silence. She didn't look at me with pity. She reached across the table and took my hand. Hank, now retired and complaining about his knees, moved into the guest cottage on our property. I had everything. A business, a woman who loved me, a father figure who respected me, a dog who adored me. Then came the final test. Tuesday night, almost midnight. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. I knew somehow. I slipped out of bed and went to the balcony. It was Dad. His voice was a wreck. Raspy, weak. "It's Frank," he said. He couldn't even call himself Dad anymore. "The doctors say it's stage 4. Pancreatic. Moved fast." "I'm scared, Nate," he whispered, the arrogance completely gone. "I don't want to die knowing you hate me. Please, 5 minutes. I need to hear you say you forgive me." I looked out at the backyard, saw the moon reflecting off the pond, saw the light on in the guest cottage where Hank was sleeping safe and sound. I thought about the boy spitting blood on the dining room floor. The cold nights in the Honda Civic Sophie lied to for 10 years. Here's the thing about forgiveness. Movies tell you it's for you, not them. They say you have to forgive to heal. But sometimes, forgiveness is just permission for someone to feel better about destroying you. He wanted absolution. He wanted me to wash his hands clean so he could face whatever came next with a lighter conscience. He wanted to use me one last time. "Frank," I said, my voice calm, peaceful even. "My father is sleeping in the guest cottage. You have the wrong number." I ended the call. Blocked the number. Blocked Mom's too. I walked back inside. Brooke stirred. "Who is that?" "Wrong number," I whispered, climbing into bed. "Just a spam caller." She hummed and snuggled into my chest. "Love you." "Love you too." The next week I read the obituary. Frank Ashford, 62. Funeral was private. I didn't go. Didn't send flowers. Instead, I took the day off. Took Hank and Brooke to a baseball game. We ate hot dogs. Hank got mustard in his beard. Brooke screamed at the umpire. We laughed until our sides hurt. I looked at them. Hank wiping his face with a napkin. Brooke cheering for a home run. And I understood something I'd been circling for years. Biology is an accident. Family is a choice. They tried to erase me. They tried to turn me into a ghost. But I'm not a ghost. I'm a guy who built his own world from the ashes of theirs. And in this world, there are no lies. I don't know what happened to Brian. Last I heard, his wife left him. I didn't look into it. Some threads you just leave hanging. Sophie is getting older somewhere, learning the truth on her own timeline. Megan's still behind bars. And me? I'm sitting on my porch with Buster at my feet, watching the sun go down. And for the first time in a decade, I'm not looking over my shoulder. So, after everything I went through, after being thrown out and betrayed, would you have answered that final call? Would you have given him the peace he was begging for? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know.